We have about 12 years to halve all human emissions if we want to stop climate change from reaching the tipping point, and that is just the start. My name is Taylor Jones, and in December 2015, 195 nations came together to sign the Paris Agreement. They agreed to limit global temperature increase to 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. This was the first agreement of its kind, and it was a big deal. But now there's a problem. On Monday the 8th of October 2018, the IPCC, or the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, wrote this report, entitled Global Warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius. For many years, scientists have been aware of the threats associated with climate change temperature increase, especially that of 2 degrees or more. But in recent studies, the IPCC found that there would be huge consequences of us even reaching the 1.5 degree mark. In the past 100 years, we have already seen a global temperature increase of 1 degree Celsius. This means that climate change is an even more urgent and potentially irreversible threat than we first realized. In fact, the ambition of the original Paris Agreement is not even on track. Many countries are not meeting the requirements, and Trump is even talking about withdrawing the US from the agreement entirely. On our current path, we will reach 1.5 degrees temperature increase at around the year 2040, and then we will hit 2 degrees at around 2070. So what's the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees? Temperature increase means increase of heat waves, droughts, heavy rainfall, ocean acidity, loss of species, ecosystem damage, and this puts our food, water, health, energy and security sources at risk. More importantly, climate change is predicted to be a poverty multiplier, which means that those who are most vulnerable today will be made even worse off in the future. Therefore, keeping temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius is incredibly important. Many of the things I've mentioned may still happen, but they will happen much more slowly, allowing us to have time to react and adapt, and also we may never reach the tipping points which are most important. For example, at 1.5 degrees Celsius, coral reefs will decline by about 70 to 90%, but if we were to reach 2 degrees, then those coral reefs would be pretty much gone. Also, the chances of the North Pole having an entire year without any polar ice increases by 10 times between 1.5 and 2 degrees in temperature increase. Even more importantly, once the Greenland and the Antarctic ice sheets melt, there is no going back. However, there are a couple of emission pathways that could keep us in the clear. This table represents temperature increase over time, starting at 1960 and ending at 2080. Currently we are at this point here, 2018. In 2017, we passed the 1 degree mark. If we continue on our current path, we will continue well through 2 degrees and skyrocket. If we were to stop all activity right now, we would most likely stay well below the 1.5 degree mark. However, the more realistic option is that we transition into net zero, which means that we increase past the 1.5 degree mark, but then dip back below it again before the year 2100. This is called the overshoot pathway, because we briefly spend a period of time above the 1.5 degree threshold. Net zero, or carbon neutrality, means absorbing the same amount of CO2 that we emit. This could be achieved realistically with carbon dioxide reduction, or CDR. We could use natural methods such as planting trees, or we could use chemical processes that trap carbon dioxide from the surrounding air, bury it deep underground where it would remain safely for hundreds or thousands of years. Unfortunately, neither of these options have been tested on a large scale by governments anywhere in the world. As a result, we don't know how effective they will be, and it is best not to rely on them and instead to reduce our carbon emissions now so that we don't rely on them for bringing us back down below the 1.5 degree mark. Avoiding too much overshoot requires that we reduce our carbon emissions by 45% by the year 2030, and it means that we meet net zero by 2050. If we don't reach net zero by the year 2075, then there is very little chance that we will keep global temperature increase beneath 2 degrees. Of these pathways, the lowest would be best for the environment, but it might actually be destructive for the livelihood of humanity. We have to walk a delicate line between reducing the impact of climate change and preserving the interests of the UN global goals and humanity in general. Actions that fulfill both of those needs are called synergies. Actions that benefit one but harm the other are called trade-offs. An example of a synergy would be sustainable forest management, which not only is better for the environment, but it also provides more food sources and it's better for the local ecosystem. And an example of a trade-off would be converting farmland into a bioenergy plant, which is good for the environment but would cause land disputes and might actually reduce food sources as well. So we need to find ways to benefit both causes. We have to do it really fast and we have to do it on a global scale. Governments need to come together internationally and agree to step up to this new challenge. But this won't be enough, because we need the cooperation of governments, businesses, activists, and the general public, anybody else in a position of power, to be involved in this cooperatively, so that we even stand a chance of avoiding the tipping points that happen when we surpass the 1.5 degree mark. There is a huge amount that we need to do. We need rapid transformation in our energy, infrastructure, land use and industrial processes. We need to phase out the use of coal and other fossil fuels, and we need to move over to fully renewable energy sources. We need to move into electric transportation, and we need to reduce the carbon footprint of the food that we eat. We also need to be empowering local authorities, communities, indigenous people and the public sector to take action of their own against this. If this sounds ambitious, that's because it is, and that's because it has to be. This is a really urgent and critical issue that won't go away if we don't act upon it. It is humans that put us here, and it is humans that will get us out of this. As it stands, humans are not very good at adapting to climate change. We are constantly at the mercy of the sun, wind and rain, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes. Natural disasters wreak havoc on humanity every single time they happen, and if this happens on a much bigger scale, then we aren't going to be ready to deal with it. A lot of change has to happen if we want to even stand a chance of existing for the next few hundred years. So what can you do as 1 in 7 billion people? First and foremost, you can spread the word, because it is going to take the involvement of everyone to solve this kind of problem. Secondly, you can pressure your government, because it is the governments that have the most influence over what happens in the future. And you can realign your career and lifestyle, become an example of progress to others. For example, using electric transportation, having a vegetarian or vegan diet, because the meat industry is one of the biggest contributors to carbon emissions. You can look at the UN's global goals online and see which of those you feel most strongly impacted by. Align your career towards that, see how you can make a difference. Volunteer at a local charity, give money to the charities that are making the most difference out there. This is an existential crisis, not just for humanity, but for the planet, and it is going to take everything that we've got. Thank you for watching.